Hello all, welcome to lesson 6 of the Rook Endgames series. In this lesson, we are going to cover the back rank defense. It's very important to master all the defenses. This is key for our understanding of the Rook Endgames. And we are looking here at this position. We saw this before. If it's white to move, then it's just going to reach the Scipione Lucena position and win, but it's black to move. So white is going to try to promote the pawn. Of course, let's change here the board so we can see this from the black perspective. In this lesson, we are going to focus on the defense. And so basically, we are going to use the back rank defense. At first, let us also realize that the rook is in the perfect long side position. So defensive side checks are also important, and we are going to use them, of course. And here we start with one of those. So we check the king. So notice that we are with 3 squares away from the file of the pawn. And of course, the best move for white is to protect with the rook. If white tries here to go and move the king, like for example, going to e8, then we simply attack the pawn with our king. And when the rook defends, we just simply check the king and then take the pawn. So very easy to win if the king allows us to attack the pawn directly. The same goes if the king goes to d8. It's the same idea. It advances the pawn, but now we are going to use the defensive side checks. We saw that before in a previous lesson. And we are keeping checking until white gives up and allows us either to grab the pawn or to repeat the position. So in the starting position, the right move from white is to defend the king, blocking it with rook d7. And now we are going to play rook a8. This is the back rank defense. So we are placing the rook in the back rank. And now we are going to see how to resist to white tries. It's also important for you, if you are playing the attacking side, if you are playing white in this situation, to try to trick black into a mistake. Of course, black will try to keep the back rank position while keeping an eye in other possibilities, but you have here a checklist over here, I think, over here. And this checklist is very important. Either you are on the defensive side or you are on the attacking side. So first thing white will try to do is to get back the control of the back rank. We are going to see that. Then, if let's see, for example, if white tries to go to a Philidor position, you remember that in the Philidor position we are able to reach the e8 with the king. We need also to control that. Other possibilities from white is to shuffle the pieces around, either the rook or the king, and we are going to see that. So this tries from white is of course to let black make a mistake and then win the end game. And of course, the other situation is to go simply to threat the Scipione Lucena position, and we are going to also see that. Let's so first start with the first one, controlling the back rank. So white here tries to control the back rank. When this happens, in fact, it's useful for you to pay attention to what I'm going to say. Why to play the rook? If the rook is going to threat a check on g7, like for example, going over here and threatening a check on the g file, then we simply check again, so forcing the rook to come back, okay? And if the rook tries to shuffle away, so not threatening to check on the g file, then we are going to move the king. This is very important. Of course, if the rook tries to control the back rank, like in this situation, we check again. So we are going to use this technique, either passing turn using our king or checking on the a7 rank, if the rook moves to a threatening position. So let's start first again with trying to control the back rank. So we simply check again. And now if white goes, for example, with the king over e8, this is very similar to the previous situation we saw. So we attack the pawn, and there's no way white is going to be able to save the pawn. So without being possible for white to go to e8, let's see what happens if white tries to go to d6. Of course, if white tries to come back, then we just repeat the position, so it's basically just going to be the same. So let's go with trying to go to d6. So we check again. We are using the defensive side checks. White goes to e5, then we check again, and now white blocks with rook. So the idea here is if the rook takes, well, this is a winning pawn endgame for white. So again, white is trying to get lucky. And of course, white's next move is going to threaten, as soon as the rook moves away, is going to threaten to check our king. So here we need to pay attention to the position. And the king is not in the position to help advancing the pawn. So it's more in a Philidor position. And in a Philidor position that we also saw in a previous lesson, we see that the pawn is already on the 6th rank. So as soon as the pawn is on 6th rank, the technique is to go to the other side. So we try to attack the king from the top. And it works. Let's see what happens if, for example, now white tries to check our king. Then we go to the Philidor position. We go to control the promotion of the pawn. Now the king moves, but because we have our rook in the perfect position, so we can check the king, and we are going to check until we are tired. And as soon as the king moves away from the pawn, we simply attack the pawn again, forcing the situation not to be progressive for white. And as you see, it's impossible for white to reach a winning endgame. So what happens is from here, white can't progress, so basically comes back to a similar position of the start. Now, we are going to not pay attention to possibilities of threefold repetition, because here the purpose is for us to understand what are the challenges that the attacking side is going to pose to our defense. And now let's try a second. We saw already that white was unable to control the back rank again, was unable to force us into a Philidor losing position because we were paying attention. So let's see now another possibility, that white starts to shuffle. So basically, white is trying to trick us into a mistake. And the mistake would be, because white is not threatening check on g file, we should move the king. Uh, also passing turn again to white. This is more or less the rule. And if we do something like this one, well, this is a big serious mistake, because white now can go with king e8, and we can't avoid the promotion of the pawn. Let's see, for example, if we move the king, then it advances the pawn, and now it's just a matter of technique. And as you can see, we are playing already a losing Scipione Lucena position, but whatever we do, it's game over. And soon the checks are over, and the pawn will promote, and we are going to be lost. So over here, the technique is for us to also move our king. And let's see what happens if the rook moves again. Not threatening to check on g5, so we move the king again. And we do that almost in autopilot mode. So white is shuffling around the rook. Of course, it can do this with the rook or the king, and depending on the situation, we are going to adjust. And now let's see, for example, what happens over here. It tries to threat again a Lucena position. So as you can see over here on the list, over here, we also need to control the Scipione. What happens if we get the threat of checking? Do you remember from the start? Yes, we give a check. So, and we keep doing these checks until white needs to come back with the rook. So now white blocks the rook again, and our move is to go into the passive mode. back rank, so rook a8, and now it's white to play. Okay, it check us. We don't need even to think much. We just keep repeating the same pattern. And if the pawn advances, well, then we attack the pawn and it's game over, because we are going to be able to either use the defensive checks or winning the pawn. Because if the king moves too far away, then we simply attack the pawn, and now we keep controlling the promotion of the pawn, and simply white can't progress anymore. Okay, without being able to progress, as we saw, let's see this in practice. Let's change this for the engine. So we are going to start from the position, trying to defend on the black perspective. Let me just change here to the engine so you can see this in action, because it's always important to practice this situation. So now I'm going to play against the engine. So first thing, I check the king. Let's see what white does. Okay, it blocks, so I go to the back rank defense. It starts to shuffle the rook, not threatening any check on g file. So I simply also pass the turn with my king again. Okay, no threats. I keep shuffling also my king. Now there is a threat on the g file, so I attack the king, check, check. Rook comes back, I go to the passive position. The king moves, so as you see, white is shuffling around to see if it tricks us. Of course, we are not going to check the king. We are going to move our king. And again, we keep almost in autopilot mode. Now it tries to control the back rank again. So we check the king and again go passive. And as you can see, it's almost easy. It's almost easy. Now threatening again a check on the G file. So I check again and I check again and I will check, and then I go to passive mode, and then I shuffle my king. And as you can see, we reach a draw repetition, so a threefold draw, so we can reset and try again. Let's see if white places us another change. We saw this on the beginning, so the king goes to e8. Once the king goes to e8, we attack the pawn. So this is more or less easy. Now check and grab the pawn, and it's an easy draw. Let's try another one. So we start with a check. The king moves, then we use the defensive side checks, and again the defensive side checks, and again the defensive side checks, and we keep attacking. Okay, now it's like on the first move the king goes to the same place, so we attack the pawn. Again, check, grab the pawn, exchange the rooks, and it's a draw. Let's see another one. Let's see if white now. Let's try again, because white is not helping over here. Okay, side checks again, side checks again. Oh, please, can you do something more challenging than doing this? Let's try another try. Okay, this I am making this looking simple, but this is not simple. Okay, so let's see if white can place us. Oh no, I can't allow this. Let me see just from here. Okay, shuffling the rook again, attacking, threatening to go to the Scipione Lucena position. So we now attack the king, and the king comes, and now okay, I can't progress much. Okay, this is starting to become boring. Let's not lose focus. Let's see what happens over here. So the king moves up. Well, here I can attack the pawn or simply attack the king. Let's go. Attack the king again and again and again. Now it protects the king. So as you remember, we are facing a Philidor-like position because the king is not helping the promotion of the pawn. So the better here is to go to a1. And from a1, I am able to check the king. Okay, will this be good? No, we need to use the defensive side checks before going again into the up position and again and check again. Well, this is more challenging. It's going to be a draw anyway. Okay, I won't bother you anymore. Let's just reset this. I think you already saw. Well, this. I am afraid that this practice against the engine may have made you think this is easier than what it is. But remember the list. Remember the list. We need to control, of course, the back rank. Then we need to control the Philidor position. We need to pay attention to any tricks when white is trying to shuffle around the pawn. And then we also need to pay attention to, of course, the tries to go to Scipione Lucena position. I hope the lesson was useful for you, and I see you again in future lessons. Bye bye.